So I'm in my parts rig here, and we're tracing this hole since we're putting in the Berg Warner 1356, and this is where the hole is for the transfer case shifter on this pickup. So what I did is I made a mark right there in reference to that hole. That's where that cover, that plate goes right here. And then I also referenced this kind of like body line almost right here. And then pushed it tight on the floor and traced it. Then what we're going to do is we're going to cut this out. And then we're going to put this on my 86 and we're going to start cutting it out. I'll show you how we do that. This is what the floor looks like without that paper. This is the hole that we're trying to replicate in mine. Once we get the shift boot put on there, then we'll drill these holes because it's pretty hard to get it exact when you're doing stuff like this. This is probably the best way to do it, the fastest way to try to get it as close to stock as possible. After we got that cut out, what you do is you're going to tape this down on your floor and you're going to line up that one right there, and then this one, this line is a little bit different than that one in that other pickup. It's not quite as wide, so we'll just line up the bottom one right there. We're going to trace this out and then we'll get to cutting it. That's about as good as it gets right there. It's as most accurate as you can be. So let's get the hole saw, and we're going to find a hole saw that matches the radius of these corners, and we're going to drill each corner out. Then what we're going to do is we're going to take a Sawzall. I was going to use a plasma cutter, but I don't want to mess with the air compressor, and it's going to burn this paint and everything in here. So I'm just going to drill each 4 corners with the hole saw that matches closest to the radius, and then we'll take a Sawzall and try to carefully cut all this out to where it needs to be. It's probably going to be sharp, I'm sure. That one. I think we'll just leave her like that. I'm not going to drill the holes yet for the shift boot. I think until we get the carpet back in, that way I know exactly where they need to go, because I'm not sure how forward or back the shift boot needs to go, or how up the shift boot has to go. So we'll do that later. I think we're going to work on getting the tranny in right now and getting the flywheel put on, the flex plate taken off, and the clutch thrown on and that kind of stuff. We're going to remove the flex plate, 6 bolts, 3/4 inch. Be a little bit heavy here. And I don't think this will be too bad. It's not like a flywheel. Yeah, it's pretty light. We got that off. Now we're going to take off this automatic metal piece right here. I don't know what you even call this, like a heat shield or something. We're going to be doing a rear main on this. Obviously, it looks kind of crappy. What you want to do is get all the grease and nastiness off of this. Take a flathead in here. Start pry that rear main out. Remove it. Then we're going to take a paper towel and maybe some starting fluid or something and kind of clean up the crank around here, get some of the nasty stuff off. Then we're going to put on the new rear main seal. I got a Felpro and it's got a little plastic installer that helps you put it on. Here's your new Felpro rear main seal. It's got this plastic installer. It's kind of like belled out right here. And what you do is you just set that on the crank. Push that plastic onto the crank. And then you can try to start to push this seal on there. Take that out, and then we're going to tap all the way around it. And then we're just going to keep tapping on it until we get it all the way in. Next you're going to take a rag and some starting fluid or brake cleaner or something and clean the inside of this hole. Clean that up nice. That's pretty good. This is a new pilot bearing. Got a socket. We're going to tap it in. Just go till it's flush. I think we got her. So we're going to install this plate out of the manual pickup. Oops. Just like that. Next we're going to get the flywheel put on. So over here in our new box of goodie stuff, we got a new flywheel for a 1989 F250 5-liter. We got a clutch kit, an 11-inch clutch kit for an 89 F250 5-liter. We got a new clutch hydraulic line for an 89 F250. You have to use that because that's along with the transmission. That came with the transmission. This is a new transmission mount for an 89 F250 with the 5-liter 5-speed. The only thing that is for an 86 F250 5-liter, which is mine, is the master cylinder. That's the only thing that is 86. The rest of this stuff is 89. So this is a slave cylinder, Lux slave cylinder. That's also for an 89 F250 5-liter. So yeah, the only thing that you're keeping original is the master cylinder when you install the master. The rest of this stuff is all new. So let's get this new flywheel thrown up there, and I'll show you the torquing the bolts and everything. So this 302 is externally balanced, so the bolt hole pattern is going to be different. Once we throw it up here, we'll figure out what way we need to turn it so all the holes line up. Can't see very well. Not that way. Not that way. That ain't right either. Nope. You might think we got it right there. So I'm going to put these bolts in. Shit. Then I'll put some Loctite on them after at least get a couple bolts in. There we go. I'll put some Loctite on them and get them tightened up. It says you can torque these from anywhere between 85 and 90 foot-pounds. I'm going to do 90. Do it in like a star sequence. I got this little pry bar in here off of one of the bell housing bolts screwed into the engine, just so we can torque this down. I wanted to warn you guys before you make the same mistake as me. You see the difference in these two bolts? The right one's a little bit longer. Well, I didn't know there was any difference in the bolts, and I put the auto bolt back in, and yeah, stripped it out. So hopefully the threads aren't messed up in the crank, but I went and got the manual bolt out of that one of my 89 parts pickup. So let's get these swapped out, and hopefully I didn't pull the threads in the crank too, because that would suck. I'm not sure what I would do. Just wanted to warn you before you make the same mistake as I did. Got the bolts torqued up. It didn't end up stripping out inside the crank, so we got lucky. So now you're going to take your clutch disc with your alignment key. The alignment tool gives you some spline grease. It says flywheel side on this side, so you're going to put this side on the flywheel. Stick it into your pilot bearing. Let it hold itself there, and then we're going to go get the pressure plate. Get the pressure plate thrown on in a minute. I didn't say this before. Make sure before you put the clutch disc on that you got the flywheel clean, wiped off with brake clean or starting fluid. And the same thing with your pressure plate. So now we're going to put the pressure plate up there. Like that. And hold it. And grab some bolts. Get the holes lined up. You can torque these flex plate bolts, these 6 of them, anywhere between 22 to 30 foot-pounds. What I like to do is run them all up so this pressure plate is touching the flywheel evenly, and then don't directly go to your final torque. Do it like an increment. So I went like 15, 20, 25, and then I'm going to torque them to 30. So I have the torque wrench, it's on 25, set it to, it's on 30, so then we'll torque in a crisscross. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then we'll just go all the way around again. And you see this little key, and I can go pull it out now. So you're good to go. Next thing we're going to do is install the slave cylinder onto our transmission. We'll open this package up, take our slave cylinder out. So here is our new slave cylinder with the throttle bearing already installed on it. There's a spring. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this slave cylinder just like this. I'm going to push it into there just like that. Going to grab our two 10mm bolts. Put a little bit of Loctite on them. That's actually quite a bit. We'll put a little bit on this one. And we're going to thread them in. Just like that. Got those threaded in, and the torque spec on this is 14 to 19 foot-pounds, so as long as you're in between there, you're good. Get them tightened up. There's just like that. Since we are installing the transmission with the transfer case, what we're going to do is we're going to remove it. So we're going to pull this breather off right here. Then we're going to pry this linkage off right here. If I can get it off. There we go. Pop that linkage off, and then there's 6 13mm bolts we're going to take off around this radius of this transfer case. We're going to get the transfer case removed off the ZF5. I got to reseal the transfer case, so we're just going to install the ZF5 first, and when that reseal kit gets here, we're going to reseal it because it was leaking. There. I'm going to take our gasket scraper. We're going to scrape that old gasket off and get it thrown up on the tranny jack. In an attempt to throw my back out, see if we can get. There, and then we're going to throw the chain over it and chain it up. And look at that puny little AOD on the left. That's a real transmission, the old ZF5, eh? We got the pickup jacked up as high as the jack will go in the back. Got a block of wood in the front. Let's get the tranny in there. We left the shift tower on there because the floor pan is out, so we can leave that on there. That's fine. Well, we ended up finally getting it in there and fought it for a while till we got it lined up, but it's in there now. I had to take that shift tower off because it wouldn't clear when I had the pickup jacked up to get it underneath, so I just put it back on, but it's under there. Only thing is, there's two holes for the crossmember that it bolts to, and they don't line up. The crossmember has to get moved back a little bit from the hole that was factory for the AOD, so I'm sure that's going to be a lot of fun to drill through that frame, especially since we don't have any good drills anymore. But yeah. It's one 1:38 in the morning, so I think we're gonna call it a day. My 86 never came with the ZF. I'm looking at my 89 F250, and I'm measuring the holes center to center between the AOD. The AOD is the closest one to the front of the engine, and the ZF for the M5OD crossmember hole is this one. So we'll measure that, mark the holes, and then we'll come back and figure out how to center the hole from the side of the frame. Next, you want to measure from the outside of the frame to the center of the hole. That way you know how far the hole needs to be in. And then this hole is going to be the same size as the one that's already drilled in your frame, so you can measure it too if you want, but it's the same size as the hole that's in your frame already. So just find a drill bit that fits in there, and there should be enough slop where the bolt will slide in. So what I did is I first drilled the hole with like a 1/4 inch drill bit for a pilot hole, and then I went to 3/8 and then 1/2 inch. This is the original AOD hole. This is the new hole on both sides. I got it bolted up. I got the gussets put back in and tightened up. And I did have to pull the exhaust and unhook it, and I was able to get it slipped in there. I didn't completely pull the exhaust out, but we got all the gussets in and everything. There probably is a torque spec for these. I did see it, but I just used the impact and put on a low setting. It's not that big of a deal. It's not like a bell housing bolt or something critical. They're pretty big bolts, so just make sure they're good and tight. So yeah, then we're gonna torque the bell housing bolts, so then we can tighten up this tranny mount bolts right here. We're gonna take our gasket out of our transfer case reseal kit and put some RTV on this transmission after it's clean. Stick the gasket on. You sure as hell think could get a gasket better quality than that. Doesn't line up at all. Wow. Pretty sad. Reseal kit. We got new seals for the tail shaft here and this slip yoke and some other seals. So let's try to get this old one taken off. See if these new seals are any good at all. I have to get a different screwdriver. This one is going off. That one's off. We're going to clean it off and find this. Looks like this is the one for it, and we'll put that one in. New one, there's like this little ridge right here. We're going to line it up with this line on the transfer case. Push that in. And then I actually just use a regular hammer. Just tap it until it's flush, or you can use like a punch or something and then just tap it all the way around. It's all metal, so you're not going to hurt anything. On the front here, there's this like front main. We're going to take a screwdriver in between that case and this, and so we can get in between the seal and the case. And then work your way around and pry the seal out. Whoops. Put some RTV on there. Installed that front main seal, then now we took off the tail shaft extension because the speedometer gear, I don't know if you can tell, is pretty shot, and I bought a new one, so that hasn't came yet. So we're gonna wait to put the transfer case on. Now we're gonna work on something else. We're gonna throw the starter in, put these two bolts in it, tighten them up, and we're gonna start working on some other stuff until we get those parts in. Make sure you put in the manual starter. The automatic starter is different. This is the original starter that was on the transmission. So it's old, it's original, it's a Motorcraft, so we'll see how it runs. I wasn't going to buy a new one because since I'm putting the Cummins in this, hopefully I don't have the starter in here for this long, so that's just money that I'll save. So I'm tightening up this. We'll get that done. Put these bolts back in. Tighten them up, they're 1/2 inch for this little heat shield here. Get those tightened up with a ratchet. This is something I purchased off eBay. This is that block off plate when you have a manual. It's not really necessary, but I kind of wanted it to look factory. So we'll see if I can get it. Take these 2 screws out. And get this ratchet off here. Unscrew this one. Now we can remove this one. This is still a good one, good condition. Now we can put in our manual one like that. And we'll tighten the screws up and reinstall the dash again. Now that we got the cluster back in, we put the dash bezel back on, we put the knobs back on, and we put this plastic piece back on. So everything's back together. Next thing we're going to do is work on scraping that old gasket off of this floor plate here and get the new floor plate put in, and get that floor plate, the gasket scraped off of it, and then we can get it glued down and then bolted to the floor. We got the floor pan finally cleaned up pretty good, and the plate we're putting on, so you can either use like double-sided tape or like just regular silicone. I've got some of this RTV International stuff that I have left over from a project, so we're just going to put some bunch of RTV on here. Well, the tube exploded and I got a crap ton on there now, so get this. Well, I gotta wipe some of it off. Kind of move it around and try to smooth it out a little bit. Put the bolts in. We're just gonna go hand tighten until maybe wait like half hour or so before we tighten it up and smear this crap everywhere. So while we're waiting for that RTV to dry, we're going to install the clutch the clutch hydraulic line. So we're going to take out this plug. Make sure that it's clean in there. And it is. Take our clutch hydraulic line. Try to kind of feed it down. Feed it down to the tranny area. Maybe. Like that. Keep feeding it. This part's going to run on the firewall. There's some hoses and stuff we might have to move that are not allowing it to be where it needs to be. Oh, there's a grommet. I might take this air box off so I can get to it. What I did is I removed the air box. There's 2 hose clamps here, 2 hose clamps here. You unclip the air box, and then there's 4 11mm bolts in there. So we got this thing fed behind all this wiring and lines and stuff. So what we're going to do is pull that cap off, grab our little O-ring, stick it on the end of that fitting, shove it into the master, and there's this little roll pin that they give you. Whoops. Tap that roll pin in. Might get a little center punch and tap that in a little bit more, but it's in there. And that's not going anywhere. But then on these factory, the 89, there's like a clip here that goes into her firewall with like a sheet metal screw. And then there's one down there. We'll have to drill the hole and put those in ourselves, because obviously this pickup didn't come with this factory